Hey, everybody. This is part 2 of our 2-part episode with Tony Dudzik called 20 Questions with Tony Dudzik. He is a Wonderhead Superbrain, encyclopedic knowledge guitar master guy. Well, he just knows a lot of stuff. So hopefully you enjoy the second part of this episode. Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs. We good, everybody?
Yeah.
I got more. This is good. This is good. This is fun.
Keep it going. Can I ask you a question?
Question number 11.
11. These go to 11.
That's right. Question 11. What is your very best impulse buy? If you can look back and dig that up.
I gotta dig deep for that. Yeah, I've got a good one for that because it was an impulse buy. I was we just kind of a throw together band. We were doing some recording, and I needed a decent electric guitar because I had just moved down to Columbus, and I think I brought 1 or 2 guitars, if that, maybe an acoustic. I mean, there was a time when I don't know. I after the last band I was in up in Youngstown broke up, I just said, yeah, I had enough of this. So we got together with some buddies and we're doing some recording. And I think the best guitar I bought was from, I don't know, it was Mark at, Cowtown was open. So I got it at Cowtown Music, Mark Chatfield's place here in Columbus before it moved to Las Vegas. And I didn't know what I wanted, but it actually turned out to be a great thing. It was a Japanese Tele custom. So it was like a 60s custom that was a basic Tele, but it had binding.
Oh, wow.
So not the big guard one, just a standard one. But somebody had popped EMGs into it. So I was just like, I don't really like EMGs, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, I'll tell you what. I've got the original pickups back here. I'll give you $50 credit for the EMGs and put these in for you. I said, okay, deal.
Wow.
And so it was a really, that's another one of those guitars that I wished that I would have kept, but it was truly an impulse buy. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted, but that one, it was candy apple red. It stood out and the price was very good at the time. And I think that was the best one.
Thank you.
Perfect.
That's the answer.
Perfect. Okay. Question number 12. Why does a very small measurement, meaning scale length between a Gibson and a Fender, make such a difference in string feel?
Well, I mean, obviously, the shorter the scale length, the slinkier the strings feel.
Why is that obvious?
Well, I guess maybe it's not obvious.
I'm not saying it's not. That wasn't a challenge. Like, why is it not obvious?
Well, the distance between the nut and the bridge.
Right, but we're only talking about.
Yeah, well, it's like 25 and a half versus 24 3/4. So 3/4 of an inch.
Right. But I hear you reference that quite a bit, and I hear there are lots of other players that might talk with it or like. Especially if you're switching out guitars mid-set. I have a couple different guitars. I've got Gibson scale and Fender scale that I play in the same show.
Right.
I don't particularly seem to be super thrown off by that, but I know that is an issue for some people, and especially you referenced string tension and feel. Right. So just curious, like, what are your more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I grew up, with Fenders for the most part, and you always used 10 to 46. That was standard, light gauge slinkies, and that always worked pretty well for me. But I'm finding nowadays that I on the shorter scale lengths, like a Gibson scale length, I like to go to 11 to 48s. And then on things like Jaguars or Mustangs or whatever, the 24-inch scale length, I like to go 12 through 50, I think is what the standard set is. And the reason for that is, to me, those various scale lengths feel about the same. I mean, like if you're bending strings, or if you're doing heavy chording, power chords, whatever, the strings to me feel the same from each of those scale lengths. So if you were to put tens on a 24-inch scale length guitar, you'd be, I mean, in my case, I would be bending the strings every time I played them because I have a heavy left hand.
Right.
And so I need a little more fight from the guitar, especially on a shorter scale length. So the basic rule of thumb is the shorter the scale length, the looser or the slinkier the feel on the strings. So you have to bump that gauge up a little bit.
Gotcha.
And then you're talking about a relatively small amount. We're talking going from 10s to 11s to 12s, and it's all these are fractions, hundredths of an inch.
Yeah, but they do make a difference.
It does make a difference.
Sure does. Cool. Excellent. Next, Tony, question from Jared. Jared, go. I say words.
What question are we on, Todd?
We are on question number 13.
Ooh, lucky 13.
Lucky 13. So, all right, man. Question 13, my friend. Tell us about, the importance of the radius of the neck.
In the form of a question, please.
What is this, Jeopardy?
What's up with that?
What's up with that?
What's up with the radius of the neck?
There you go.
Thanks, Todd.
Well,
Keeping us in line.
Yes, rules is rules. I think it really depends on the style of play. Like a lot of rhythm players like a smaller radius, meaning more round. So like vintage Fenders are typically 7¼ inch radius. So if you drew a circle that was 7¼ inches in diameter, or radii, 7¼ radius. That's right.
Okay.
So it would be 14½ inches in diameter. And chopped off the section, the width of the fretboard, that would be the curvature of the top of the fretboard. And of course the frets that sit into that. So a lot of rhythm players are more comfortable with that curve.
Because you have to get most of your hand around it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
It's a little more comfortable.
Yeah. Whereas a lot of lead players like it flatter. And I think, that's why a lot of them gravitate towards Les Pauls and Gibsons in general, because they use a 12-inch radius. So instead of a curve, it's much flatter. And I think, Fender has settled over the years. The modern Fender radius is like 9.5, which is a little bit flatter, not quite as flat as a Gibson, but it is, certainly flatter than the vintage ones. So I think that's a good middle of the road. And, depending on how much, what style of playing you're playing. Boy, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good. It really, it can either help a little bit, the flatter the radius, if you're doing a lot of lead work, or, if you're doing a combination, probably the 9.5 is good. Or if you're doing mostly rhythm work, 7¼ is probably right for you.
Solid question, my man. It's probably one of the best ones yet. Okay. Question number 14. Nut material. Why does it matter?
Why not? Why shouldn't it matter? That's my question to you, Todd. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we talked earlier about what Sean did with my guitar, and that's a bone nut. I don't know if it's camel bone, cow bone, whatever.
I believe it is bovine.
Bovine in nature. A lot of companies over the years have switched to a plastic. I mean, the traditional material for a long, long time was bone. And a lot of people, that is an upgrade from a standard nut, which you'd find, a plastic, even on Gibsons, on Martins. They've developed some really good plastics. Even there's a material called Tusk.
Yep.
TUSQ.
Graphtec
makes it.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very dense plastic material. And then in some cases, some of the Graphtec stuff, they actually make it out of graphite, which is great for if you have a tremolo, because it kind of lubricates the string through the nut. A lot of times with trem systems, strings get hung up in the nut slots.
Yeah.
And the graphite ones are really good for letting that slide through. I mean, back in the day, everything was brass. I mean, that's what you wanted for maximum sustain, brass bridge, brass nut. And it also deadened the tone, in my opinion. So there's a lot of guitars out there. I mean, I've seen some really great Les Pauls.
Softer material.
I think the thought was metal makes it ring more, like a brass bell or cymbal or something like that. I don't think that it ever really worked. I mean, there's still people that swear by that, but I've seen so many really nice Les Pauls that, have been switched over, and luckily
brassified.
Brassified indeed. And, luckily you can change that back pretty easily. But I think the material, I mean, sticking with, like a natural material like bone, is always a safe choice. But if you're doing things with trems or whatever, anything that is, Fender used a roller nut at one point in time with their trem systems.
Oh yeah.
And, I guess that helps a little bit. I don't know how necessary that is.
The Fender Pluses that I really enjoy, I have a few of, they have the rollers.
Yeah.
And I've really never had a tuning issue with those.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
they're pretty decent.
I mean, I think I think more of the issue happens at the bridge end.
I agree.
So a roller bridge works better than a roller nut, but every little bit, as long as it doesn't kill the sustain, I think you're okay. But for my money, I'd go. The safe choice is a bone nut.
Yeah, and that's a pretty, I guess, maybe one of the first easier upgrades that you can do on a guitar, because chances are, if you bought it brand new, it's got a plastic nut on it. Mm-hmm. But from just about any major manufacturer. Obviously, if you're buying a boutique guitar, those things may vary, and I'm sure you can get that requested. But if you're buying something from a major brand, in most cases, unless actually specified, it's going to be plastic, almost regardless of how great.
Oh, like I said, Martins and Gibsons. I mean, they're plastic nuts. I mean, it's a form of plastic, but
right.
I don't think, other than maybe at the custom shop, they don't. They wouldn't use anything but.
And that's
plastic.
actually a pretty affordable upgrade.
Hey,
go Jared.
We're on question number 15, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We're almost there.
So I want to go back in time to the Gibson eras, and I've kind of always wondered this, but maybe you have better insight on this than I do. Is, let's talk about the big honkin' harmonica bridge. Remember those things?
Oh yeah.
Why did we usually see those on the, not the upper echelon Les Paul models? Because I don't think you really saw any of those on the Les Paul Deluxe, custom standard. You more so saw those on the SGs, on the L6S, those type of models. Is it because of a radius thing?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I think the one thing is the harmonica bridges probably were more adjustable.
Yeah,
so the longer throw, you can move the saddles back and forth a wider distance, and that might be why Gibson switched over to that at the time.
Looked awful, man.
It did look strange. I mean, it's called a harmonica bridge because it looks like the side of a harmonica with the big slots and the holes and everything. And I mean, occasionally you see them pop up on Les Pauls, but by and large, they on deluxes and things like that, they stuck to the original recipe. I think they used an ABR type bridge.
Yeah.
And that looks, to me, better. It doesn't, say, look at me, I'm a bridge.
I believe they went to like Goto, made in Germany stuff in the early mid 70s.
I think they were made by Schaller in Germany. Yeah.
And you're right. And then they went to Nashville Bridge or whatever, but it's the same bridge pretty much. Right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's like I said, the difference between that and like an ABR is the throw of the saddles.
Yeah.
And there's I think is it Cluson or WD? Well, I guess WD owns Cluson now. They reissued the harmonica bridge, so if anyone's looking for one out there, you can check that out. And that's the only replacement one that I think I've seen in years.
And on the subject also, the old bone saddles. What do you think of those?
Well, I don't think they were bone. I think they were actually nylon.
I think you're right.
I think the nylon ones, and to me that is, it's counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, nylon kind of deadens the sound. I think from a string wear standpoint, the nylon is better. But I think by and large, I mean, I'd much rather have a hunk of metal there instead of nylon.
Awesome.
Great question, Jared. Next question. What is the advantage of angled pickup positions on the guitar, like a Mosrite?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Not
Telecaster.
not tilted to follow the strings.
Not tilted,
but
angled.
Angled. Well, I mean, the logic behind it.
And on a ton of Japanese 60s guitars.
Yeah, they did a lot of that. The Japanese did some incredibly interesting things in the 60s. I think the logic behind it is closer to the bridge, the brighter the sound. So that's why, I guess if I were designing a Strat, let's say, I think I would flip it around like a Voodoo Strat. So it's the opposite directions. So you pick up some brightness on the bass strings, but lose some of the brightness. But the way a standard Strat is set up, I mean, it just really emphasizes the brightness on the treble strings. So that's really, I think, the difference. And in the case of a Mosrite, in the neck position where it's angled that way, I think they were trying to make the bass strings boomier and the treble strings a little bit brighter in the neck position.
Interesting. So you're gaining. So
I think it's just change, the frequency response and the tone of the pickup. But yeah, there's some cool things that you can do. I mean, that's a great way, especially if you have like a Strat with a swimming pool route, which means it's, a big rectangle underneath the pick guard. You can change things around and experiment with different things and even move things around a little bit. Classic examples like the Robbie Robertson Strat, where he moved his middle pickup right up against the bridge pickup at the same angle. So it kind of was almost like a humbucker configuration in that position. It looks really cool too, but it's just one of those things. I think different players have tried different things.
Yeah. I've heard that another really great way to modify a Strat is to get a Telecaster.
Well, that's how you upgrade a Strat.
I mean, as far as that goes, you could buy a neck pickup that says neck pickup on the pickup, put it, down in the bridge position. It'll sound like a bridge pickup. It's a bridge pickup. It's all about where you put that pickup.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. There was even, I don't know if you remember, there was the Gibson Grabber or Ripper basses.
Oh yeah,
they had a slide. You could actually slide the pickup.
Well, that came from the Dan Armstrong.
Dan Armstrong's. That's right.
The monkey stick. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we all agreed on that came from Dan Armstrong.
Well,
thanks, Dan.
And for those who aren't aware of the guitar that we're referencing, you might have seen it's the acrylic.
It's clear. It's a Lucite guitar. Keith Richards played one.
Yep. And,
a lot of people
and many other people. But it was just like a pretty innovative instrument at the time.
And heavy.
Yes. Jared, go ahead.
Is this 17?
Let's do 17, man. So I already know how I feel about this, and let me ask you, how do you feel about wax potting? Waxed or not waxed?
In 80% of the cases, I would say wax potting makes sense. But if you're trying to replicate the sound of, say, like a Gibson mini humbucker,
oh my goodness,
you can't get the same sound. I mean, there's a certain amount of magic that happens from the wires rattling around against each other inside.
That slight harmonic whistle. Just very ever so slight.
So yeah, for my money, I guess wax potting makes sense. For most pickups.
Can we explain what that is real quick?
Oh, sure.
Wax potting is when you take a finished pickup and you dip the whole thing in a heated pot of wax, about 150 degrees. And what that does is it fills the whole pickup all the voids and whatnot, and it just encases everything and seals everything together so that nothing in that pickup is loose at all. That would create really loud, squealy harmonic feedback in a bad way. And when we're talking about this mini humbucker here, those are super prone to having that harmonic feedback. But if it's not going through a potent amplifier and it's not overdriven, even still clean, you can still kind of get a slight harmonic feedback and use those things that are, use that sound as an advantage.
Yeah, a lot of people think they have a bad pickup, or call it microphonic.
That's right.
Which really means it acts like a microphone.
Right.
Because if you tap on it, it's like you would
really loud.
Tap on a microphone.
Exactly.
So it's, it is interesting. The potting does solve that type of problem, but I think it also changes the characteristics of the pickups too.
It can. And not necessarily the overall, tone, but I agree, it can change the overall frequency response.
And there's other things you can pot with too, of course. There's lacquer potting. There's epoxy potting. Not a good idea any day of the week.
Like on the L6S.
Yeah,
Right.
a lot of the Bill Lawrence stuff was epoxy potted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unfixable.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. Number 18, Tony.
Yes.
Why don't we see more neck-through guitars?
That's actually a really good question.
That's why I said it.
Yes, I know. Back in the 80s, maybe the 70s, that was the thing. We had the neck through and wings glued onto the side. In fact, I would go back as far as the late 50s and 60s. Rickenbacker, of all places, actually, that was their deal. A lot of their older models were, start to finish, one piece of wood, got tuners.
I mean, that's essentially what the Les Paul was starting out with.
Well, oh yeah, the log.
Yeah, the log.
Yeah. I mean that really, and it makes sense because you've got the bridge and the strings going to the nut and the tuning machines all on one piece of wood. So it stands to reason that that hunk of wood will resonate better, I guess, as opposed to bolting on a neck or gluing in a neck.
Right.
And I don't know why there aren't more. I mean, I think they're probably a little more complicated to make. It
seems like it would be easier to make because you're not worrying about neck break angle and stuff to the degree maybe you are.
Yeah, I think you have to factor in all of that stuff. And the other part of it, if you're a luthier, and that's all I'll ever be. No, I think you have to factor in, like the break angle and different things like that. Maybe more so than even gluing in a neck or bolting on a neck. Is it I think your measurements have to be pretty dead on. Yeah, I mean, in the final construction, gluing the wood pieces on the edges and things like that make it a little bit easier. But that's actually a really good question. I don't know why more places don't, and especially if you're a boutique builder, I think that makes a lot of sense to offer something like that. But
especially on bass, I would imagine.
I think that's bass and guitar. I mean, you think back to the oh gosh, I mean, there were so many guitars back then that had that, like BC Rich's and even Martin's solid bodies.
Well, the famous Araya basses from John Taylor.
From
Duran Duran. I mean, he kind of like the stripes and the bass is like, man, that thing went like crazy, and those are really nice guitars.
Yeah. I mean, if you find one used, I mean, it's bound to be
pretty
a
pricey,
pretty decent instrument too.
Yeah. Okay.
So there you go.
Excellent.
Are you boutique builders out there? Let's start making some neck throughs.
There you go.
Tony. Number 19.
19.
Switch gears and go to acoustic guitars. So you have an acoustic guitar and it did not come with a pickup system in it.
Okay.
What am I going to get? What kind of pickup system should I buy for my Martin or Gibson or whatever you bought?
Wow, there are a lot of options now. I mean, back in the day, I mean, there was like Barkus Berry.
Barkus
I mean, everybody had the Barkus Berry, or they had
Markley.
Yeah, anything that remember the ones you could stick
Put in
on
the
with
sound hole.
Yeah. Oh my God. The one company that comes to mind and has always been consistently good has been Fishman.
Yeah.
They've really refined their line to include both under saddle as well as internal microphones, and the preamp sections are actually quite good. There's some now that they're even doing. The battery pack was always kind of the crazy piece that you had to mount inside the guitar somewhere, and I think they've come up with like hearing aid battery type configuration so that it takes up less internal space, I guess.
Yeah, I've seen them where they have an internal microphone pointing up out of the sound hole inside of the guitar.
Yeah. So, and a lot of them combine both that output with the under saddle,
right?
And you can blend those two. And there's any number of things.
They also do that with violins that I see.
Yeah, for a long time, of course, there were sound hole pickups that were magnetic pickups, basically an electric guitar pickup. And the biggest problem with those, if you're using bronze strings, is the first 4 strings, if you have a wound G, were duller than the B and the E string. So I remember years and years ago, I had I forget which brand it was, but it was a magnetic sound hole pickup, and I just couldn't get it to balance. So I called the company. They said, "Oh yeah, you just have to remove the E and the B pull pieces."
Right.
And it's just like, really?
Yep.
And that, it solved the problem, but it didn't make any sense to me.
Armon actually made one without.
Oh yeah,
a B.
I think I had one.
I have one that I've repaired that's just sitting around, but
yeah,
it's the whole idea to amplify an acoustic guitar is to actually get the acoustic sound amplified, not the actual strings.
Yeah,
because essentially it turns it into an electric guitar, with the magnetic pickups.
Yeah. So I think I'd probably Fishman is a safe choice. There are other really good companies out there too, I'm sure, and some very expensive ones that are out there as well. But for the money, I think that's a safe bet.
Okay, cool.
Okay, last question, Tony. Number 20.
Make it a good one. Make it a good one.
As is many things in life, what goes around comes around. I think we've certainly seen the resurgence of reverb in a huge way. Reverb, the sound of reverb, from back in the Phil Spector sort of, early 60s, everything had reverb. We've seen all the offsets make a resurgence. What do you think is going to be sort of the next wave of things that we'll see again?
That's interesting because it's as music styles change. It seems like everything cycles every 20, 25 years. In terms of music and fashion and everything else. Some of the things my daughter listened to, it was the same sound as what I was listening to in the 80s. It's interesting. I think the traditional shaped guitars, things like Tellys and Strats and Les Pauls and SGs and P basses and J basses will always be the standard or the standards. Mm-hmm. And I think, as long as that type of as a style of music lends itself to a guitar, we've seen things with synth guitars and even the Casio synth guitar.
I have one of those.
You have one of those? So
yeah.
You're the guy.
Yeah, I have one. I bought one just to buy one. I got one.
Yeah. So that, I think that the traditional shapes and styles and sounds, there'll always be a need for that. And, by using pedals and different amplifiers and even direct injection into a board, you can, maybe change that sound to a different style of music. But yeah, I don't see, there's a lot of people that are doom and gloomers and say, oh my God, the guitars are going away. And every time that I've heard that, a year or two later, there's a new guitar player or a young kid picks up a guitar and, he's suddenly a star and that sort of thing. So I don't think that it's going away completely. As many people predict.
I mean, Kurt Cobain, he kind of brought back the Fender Mustang. in a
Oh,
way,
totally. Yeah.
You know, even though that happened years ago. Before that, you didn't really see some, 80s butt rock guy with a Fender Mustang.
Yeah. I mean, Mustangs were kind of, a dying breed at the time. And I remember when I first started playing, there were Jazz Masters and Jaguars and all these offsets that nobody wanted. You couldn't sell them in the 80s.
Right.
And my very first real guitar was a 66 Jaguar. And it was in like brand new condition, original case. And I think I got it for $175.
Jeez.
Can I have
it? I wish I still had it.
Wow.
Well, the good news is, I actually used it for a number of years and sold it to a guy for $225.
Whoa.
So I made some money.
Double.
Awesome. So, Tony, thank you so much for lending us your brain. Hopefully that was interesting and fun and informative for all of you listeners. It certainly was in here. I learned quite a few things, as I always like to do on the show. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, it was fun.
Really quick, Jared.
Well, guys, it's time for Would You Rather?
Jim Neighbors. Okay.
Okay, guys. So you bought a guitar kit. It is a rectangular guitar body shape,
Like
kind
a
of
Bo Diddley.
Bo Diddley thing. And you have a choice. You are either going to use a Bigsby tremolo or you're going to use a Mastery, Jaguar type tremolo. Is there what's the right nomenclature for that? Other than
I've always called it either Jazz Master Jaguar trem.
One of those things.
Offset.
Vibrato.
So, would you rather have the Bigsby or would you rather have Mastery?
Tony.
Well, between the choice between the two, the Mastery is actually a really nicely machined piece of metal. That style of tremolo kind of lends itself to a little more. Bigsby's can be subtle too, but it's smoother. It's the sound out of a Jazz Master or Jaguar trem to me is always just a smoother sounding. Whereas a Bigsby, you can pretty much only go down, and you can't really pull up on it very much.
Right.
Neither one of them you can do dive bombs or squeal climbs and that sort of thing. But I think I would probably. Yeah, for the if it was a simple, easy choice, I'd go with the Mastery setup.
Okay, I'm going to ask Jared next.
Well, I think I would also like to use the Mastery because even though the Bigsby is a very, very good, sturdy, reliable tremolo, I really like the way the Mastery type, Jaguar type, kind of hides all the the magic and the levers and springs and whatnots underneath. I like how it sits inside the guitar where a Bigsby is, flipped around when you see everything happening on the outside. So I like the look of
It's an
the
easier
Mastery.
install on the Bigsby, though.
Oh, sure. You
bolt
just
it to the
slap it
top.
right on top. Yeah, and you can put it on many different kinds of guitars, like Les Pauls, and they make, kits so you could put them on about anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, I like the look, and the Mastery is a great quality trem. I'll go with that.
All right, I'm going to put a Bigsby on a rectangle because it's just going to look better, period. Let's just be blatant about that. And I think just that kind of look and feel and sound, that's all I need. That'd be cool. I'd be good with that. All righty. Maybe I'll paint it checkerboard.
There you
There
go.
it is.
That would
There it is
actually
right
be
there.
freaking cool.
Are you gonna-
I'm going to make that. That sounds awesome. I like this.
You gotta router the sides too and give it that nice.
With the German carve.
Yeah.
A box with a German carve
yeah.
and a Bigsby painted checkerboard. Ooh, man, that's
Yep.
wild. Okay. Tony.
Well, at this time of the show, we like to thank some very special people. If you go to patreon.com, you can learn how to become a sponsor of this or a patron of this program.
$1, $5, $10, and up.
Oh yeah, you can, and each level has really nice prize packages and different things like that. But at the $10 level, you become an executive producer. And one of the benefits of being an executive producer, Jared, is
You get to have your name read on the thing.
and that's what I'm going to do right now.
Great.
So without further ado, we would like to thank our executive producers, Tom Barazin, Martin Cliff, David Wolfson, Matt Brammer, Carlos Mancha, Pete Marshall, Derek Fitzer, Robin Smith, John Daly, Oliver Gonzalez, Sean S. Chris Kearney, John Anglin, Robert Marfleet, Darren Gregory, Gary Goodman, Zach J. Wright, and Doug Christ. Thank you all very much. Go to patreon.com/The Guitar Knobs and find out how you too can become a patron.
Thank you.
Right. And last but not least, Tony, you can be found at Pick Guardian 1.
Pick Guardian, well,
everywhere.
yeah, on the social media, it's Pick Guardian 1, but go to the website, pickguardian.com. Drop me a line. Let me know what you need. I will be more than happy to make a custom pick guard just for you.
Hey, if you need boutique pickups, new and vintage, go to BrandonWildPickups.com.
There you go.
Beautiful.
Jared
Yep.
Brandon. Just
And
give me-
you can shoot me a note at todd@theguitarknobs.com. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Hope you liked it. I'd love to hear your comments on it. And have an awesome guitar week. Subscribe! Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Why don't we...
I've been sneaking them out all night.
We're getting punched.
Door shut.
You are the smart one, aren't you?
Do you have any other questions? Because I don't think that's all that great either.
Each of those is wrong.
And the guitar is a triangle shape. The body is.
Maybe it's
What?
more of a rectangular shape.
Rectangle. I don't know.
What the hell?
I don't think so. I don't think so. All right.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/The Guitar Knobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.